All right. Happy Thursday. I hope you are doing great today. I realize that I've done a number of live events now, been on several podcasts, produced a ton of content, and have shared maybe bits and pieces of my personal story, but not the whole story. And certainly I'm not going to spend a ton of hours. That will take hours and days to share my food journey. But I thought I would share with you today a few key highlights that can hopefully serve you and inspire you and help on your personal journey of growth and transformation. I have taken some notes on the side so I can stay focused and not ramble. And the reality is some of this is very deeply personal to me, so I may even get emotional, and I apologize in advance for that, but I want to keep this raw and organic. So here it is. So for those who don't know me, my name is Vessi Kapulian. I grew up at a very different time and very different place behind the Iron Curtain in Bulgaria. My family did not have much. We were not poor, but I was definitely made aware of, and at a young age I learned the how to manage money and finances, what we can and cannot afford. I also learned the principle of delayed gratification. My mom would often buy us clothes that were a size, or shoes a size or two bigger, so we can grow into them. My dad would repair electronics and things around the house, and thankfully he's an electrical engineer, so he knows how to do that really well to this date. We were not poor, but certainly not affluent. But overall, I had a very happy childhood full of love and support. And I share this with you because oftentimes we especially when you're born, right? You don't choose where you are born and in what family, and we don't often choose the cards we're dealt with, but it's what we do and make out of the situations. And in this case, it was leveraging the resources that were made available to me, leaning into my skill set. And I'll go into that into more detail in a bit, and focusing on not on what is lacking or why things won't work or why things are not possible, but instead focus on why it is possible and what are the skills and resources you have available to make things happen. So at the time, as you can imagine, behind the Iron Curtain, the world outside was mysterious. Going abroad was definitely not an option, and even travel within the Eastern Bloc countries was difficult and required special permissions and jumping through hoops. And at that time, my mom made a bold promise to me and my brother. If you learn English, I will send you abroad. I have no idea how she was going to do that, but my desire and curiosity to see and experience life behind the wall was so strong. So I got to work. A few years later, the wall did fall. I was actually accepted into an English language high school, and my freshman year, my mom fulfilled her promise. That summer, I visited Japan and the UK. And I share this with you, carrying the earlier thought of leaning in on your skills and what you have, but also I share this with you to highlight the importance of aiming high, having dreams that seem impossible and unreal. There's no easy button. You have to take action and get to work, right? I studied after hours to English so I can learn the language. I studied extra so I can get good grades and pass numerous exams to eventually get accepted into an English language high school. So there was work involved, but having that impossible dream, which I recently saw the a different interpretation of that with impossible, meaning I am possible, right? Aiming high and then keeping your promises. In that case, my mom made a bold promise, but she kept it. And I carry that in my DNA today, and following through and promising what I do when I work with other people. But at that point, the fire was on. I had my mind, learning English opened up a whole new world of possibility, and I had my mind set on studying abroad for my university degree. Now, financially, it was not something we could afford, so earning a full scholarship was the only option. So I focused on academics. I participated in the math Olympics, physics and chemistry Olympics, international English language essay competitions. I remember studying after hours in the local library and started to browse through hundreds of university and college catalogs. I remember the Peterson's Guide, and mind you, at that time there was no internet. So the library was the only option and the resources available at the time. And eventually I selected several colleges and universities of interest. By several, I mean hundreds. Started mailing hundreds of letters requesting their catalogs to learn more about them, in some cases sending faxes. The post office knew me by name, by my first name, because I was frequently there, either mailing or faxing something. I still remember when my parents budgeted their money so we can buy gas and make the trip to Sofia, the capital city, where I could take my university exams, the TOEFLs and the SATs eventually. And all that hard work and persistence paid off. I got accepted into a number of universities and eventually decided to join the University of Arkansas on a full scholarship. I also want to give here special thanks to Nasko and Rumi Radinsky, who helped me with that selection, because often it is in those moments of decision where our destiny is shaped, as Tony Robbins says. And it was definitely a moment where my destiny and the next step was shaped. But I share this with you because this is a lesson of having not only that burning desire, focusing on your skills, putting in the work, but also the fact that with the right people by your side, you can accomplish anything. I was very fortunate, and to this date, I'm grateful to have a loving and supporting family, as well as friends who have been with me along the way to make that journey and make those dreams real and possible. And so that's how I arrived to the US. It was nothing I had ever imagined. I landed in a small town in northwest Arkansas called Fayetteville. Beautiful city, and the perfect place for me to start life here in the US with some of the most amazing and kind-hearted people that I met along the way. But from there on, I stayed on the traditional path of going to school, earning good grades, eventually joining a large firm and starting to climb that corporate ladder. At the time, being a CEO was the gold standard of success. And so that's what I was motivated to do. But a few years into it, the signals started appearing. The Enron scandal, the global financial crisis, a few corporate restructures, which left many people without jobs, with decimated retirement portfolios, or both. The last restructure within my own firm is one I will never forget, because I walked into the office one day only to find out that 70% of my colleagues were let go. I'll spare you the details, but I remember how I felt on that day. I was sad, I was heartbroken, and I was scared. What if I am next? I survived, and while my ego wanted to tell me, well, you survived because you were special, my brain, my heart, my gut were abundantly clear. You could be next. And Vessi, don't forget that after all, this is a cost-cutting decision. so you're probably paid less. You're not special in any way. And I started thinking, what can I do to solve the problem? What are the things that I control that can help me move past this? Now, growing up in Bulgaria, when people talked about investments, they referred to hard assets like real estate. And that is the moment when I think that seed that was planted in me years ago germinated. It was also a way I turned to real estate because it was also a way where I could leverage my commercial lending background in betting deals. So I thought to what I felt was safe and comfortable, which was real estate. And initially I thought small. I thought maybe I'll buy a home or two, although in retrospect it was small, but at that time it was a big decision. I'll buy a home or two, and that will be my small retirement nest egg that I can lean on for cushion if I found myself on the streets without a job or with my portfolio decimated in my 60s. By upbringing, I've always been very fiscally responsible, but also I was never attracted to luxury things or glossy things. They were never my thing. So over time, I was also able to accumulate a ton of savings. Now, not a ton to buy an investment property in California, where I guess today's values are 800,000 to a million. At that time, it was slightly less, but certainly not enough. And that's when I thought, well, how do I solve this problem? Again, thinking through what is the solution here versus getting stuck. And I thought about investing out of state. Now, mind you, all these thoughts were going through my mind at the time, and sometimes it's what we also manifest and what the universe sends our way. So I had stumbled across a real estate seminar in downtown LA. It eventually turned out to be one of those where you go from one meeting to another and they try to upsell you to different tiers. I never ended up joining those 5 or 6 figure masterminds, but I took copious notes and I started going through local real estate investment clubs. And eventually I met a gentleman there, Matthew Owens, who frequently talked about investing out of state and sharing his experiences. And often he would end the talks with, well, if you have any questions, call me. And so one beautiful day I called him. I thank him for the time and insights. And I asked him if he knows someone who sells properties out of state. Sure enough, and thankfully, he did. And so I got to work, did my diligence on the numbers, the market, flew in to see the property, and the rest, as they say, is history. That, after a couple of years, led me to buying another property and then another, and that's when the light bulb went on. This is not just a small retirement nest egg, but if I stack enough cash flowing investment properties, this could provide a decent income stream that could provide that much needed cushion that I needed, especially for a sole provider like me. I ran the numbers and it became very clear that if I was to scale this, I would need to buy hundreds of single family homes to get to a decent income level. And at that point, I realized, well, if I was to leverage other people and other people for time and money and start thinking about partnerships, I really want to do it in a more efficient manner versus buying hundreds of single family units. And that's when I made the decision to transition to multifamily or apartments. Not only that, but I could leverage my experience as a commercial lender as well as my residential investing experience. And that's how the next chapter got started. And as in any new venture, if you haven't figured out by now in my own journey, the very first step I take and the very first step I recommend to any new investor to take is to get educated. So I did just that. I practiced what I preach. I joined a mastermind. I got a mentor. I devoured a ton of books, content, media, and I still do to this day. I'm constantly reading, learning, and by nature, I'm a curious being. So I continue to enjoy the learning aspect of it. And eventually, I bought my first 11 unit apartment with three other partners, and shortly after transition to syndications, buying larger apartment properties of 150 units plus or minus. And then what I dreaded most came to reality. One beautiful day, I walked into my office thinking that I'll have a standing meeting with my now former boss, only to find out that the division I was part of is being dismantled. 90% of my colleagues, myself included, were being let go, and we had 30 minutes to say our goodbyes, collect our belongings, and exit the building before our computer and building access was terminated. The wound may have healed, it's been a couple years now, but the scar is still large and deep. That was 15 years of blood, sweat, and tears, dedicating myself to the firm. And just like that, it was over. I share this with you because I want to lean into that pain, and may that be your gain. May that be your wake up call. Whether you're self employed or whether you have a W 2 job, relying on that single source of income is just not enough. So I hope that story at least plants some food for thought, and better yet, inspires you to take defiantly committed action to build a safety net for you and your loved ones. Thankfully, when this time around this happened, I had learned my lessons that I shared with you a moment ago, and I was prepared. Since the prior layoff, I had started investing in real estate, and I was able to build a small cash flowing portfolio that was generating sufficient income to cover very basic living expenses. That, along with a very healthy savings reserves, multiple discussions with my family, close friends, prayers for health and guidance, led me to make the decision to bet on myself and start what I was planning to start eventually. I guess the universe thought that I needed that gentle kick to get going. And so I started my own real estate advisory and investment firm. Now I'm on a mission to help other high achieving professionals and business owners create more optionality in their lives by investing in real estate. I also coach many investors new to the space on how to analyze deals so they can protect their capital. And I still, to this date, very heavily lean on my commercial lending background by applying a risk management approach to growing my investors' portfolio slowly and responsibly, one deal at a time. And I'm on a mission to create educated and empowered investors. So if you want to learn more, you can connect with me on LinkedIn and follow my educational content on LinkedIn and YouTube. Or for more information on passive investing, go to dbacapitalgroup.com, or for underwriting apartment properties, mastering multifamily underwriting.com. And I'll leave you with this thought to never forget to dream, believe, and achieve. Because as my mom says, we're only as big as our dreams are. And I will add to that, none of it would matter if we don't take action to make these dreams real. Have a blessed day. Ciao.